Hi, I'm Mike Rothman, and welcome to another episode of Song and Wine, Brooklyn Art Song Society's web series where we discuss our upcoming concerts over a glass of wine. I'm joined today by baritone Brian Mexdorf, and today we are going to be discussing the fifth and final concert of our home series, which features the songs of Jean Sibelius and Edvard Grieg. Me and Brian will be performing some songs by Sibelius, and that's coming up Friday, March 6th at the Brooklyn Historical Society. Before we start, I just want to thank our wine sponsor, Waterfront Wines. They are at 360 Furman Street in Brooklyn Heights. They specialize in organic and all-natural wine, and today they're giving us a red from Oregon, which we're going to try right now.
Absolutely.
Let's see.
Cheers.
Cheers.
That's good.
Super good. So we are doing songs by Jean Sibelius.
Mm-hmm.
Jean Sibelius is a composer that a lot of people will probably know from his symphonies and orchestral works and his violin concerto. But actually they might not know the songs, which are not regularly performed in America. What were your opinions about Sibelius before you knew these songs? And now, what are your opinions of Sibelius now that you know these songs?
Yeah. For me, it was really kind of night and day. I only knew of Sibelius as much as anybody who majored in music in college might, you know, from sort of a survey class perspective. So I knew that he was a violinist, and I knew that he wrote a bunch of symphonies, and everybody knows of, if only by name, Finlandia. And so, you know, of course I knew of him. I knew sort of the general sort of sonority that he likes to play with, sort of brassy, and think like Bruckner, Brahms, that. But I didn't know much else about him at all. Specifically, I couldn't have sung you a tune by him as of, you know, a couple of months ago. But these songs have sort of changed my outlook toward him in a pretty big way. They have the sort of dramatic tendencies that he has for me, but they're so much more simple and pared down in almost every way. Even the longer, sort of more drawn out ones are really somewhat episodic almost and simple. And then we pair all the way back to some of them like the Langton Heter, which is almost a straight up folk song, you know? So I thought of him as, you know, thick, brassy, symphonic, and these are really scaled back, true art song, which, to be totally honest, I didn't even really know that he wrote a bunch of art songs. And he wrote like 100 of them, right?
He's written 100, and he was himself very proud of them. I think one of the reasons they're not performed very frequently, which is something we'll talk about later, is many of them are in either Swedish, which was actually his native tongue, or Finnish, which are not normal languages that people know. So, so that acts a little bit as a barrier. I was, you know, surprised because especially, you know, Sibelius, you know, again, is a symphonic composer, and the piano parts are very interesting and much to discover for me. They're, in many ways, I think Sibelius is a good sort of next step for composers like Brahms and Schumann, in terms of art songwriting of sort of romantic style. And it's lots of similar themes of lost love and heartbreak and of the Germanic tradition. But actually, in his piano writing, in some of the songs is simple and sparse, but can get very thick. And almost, to me, it reminds me a lot of Rachmaninoff's piano writing. And that makes a little bit of sense because Finland and Russia are actually very close to each other and culturally more similar than people realize. In fact, I think Helsinki and St. Petersburg are like just a couple hours apart.
Yeah, it's sort of, to me, you know, as we're talking about this, it seems like it's a real blend of Germanic and Russian styles. But the thing, and I'm not a true pianist in any sense, but the thing that I noticed, even just playing them along, you know, as I was learning the songs, is that there's not a lot of like melodic, what I would say as a non-pianist, rewarding material to play.
Yeah.
But it can get really thorny and sort of dense and kind of interesting. For
Yeah,
you, right?
I have a lot of tremolos,
Yeah.
a lot of like jumping, very angular jumps
Yeah.
around the keyboard. A lot of these piano parts, feel like passages from solo works on their own with sort of a voice on top sometimes.
Yeah, sure.
Especially more like virtuoso writing. Some of them are quite challenging.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think those are all the interesting elements. There's also, I think, in the writing, the symphonies have this sort of Finnish, wide open tundra space expansiveness to it, like in works like the Fifth Symphony and in the Violin Concerto. And I think that's also in these songs. A lot of the chords I'm playing are, big, wide open chords.
Yeah.
Or I'm just sort of like sitting on a harmony for 2, 3, 4 measures without it changing, which gives this feeling of sort of expansiveness.
Even in some cases, like the song Theodora that we'll be doing, it's essentially one harmony throughout the whole piece.
Yeah.
And it's really sparse, and I'm sort of just singing scales. Funky scales, but scales, and you're sort of playing the same harmony over and over again, really low for page and a half, 2 pages, right?
Yeah.
And then you sort of move up really high, but so it's both simple and thorny at the same time.
Yeah, very chromatic often in both lines. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, and I want to go more into this, Sibelius wrote his songs in 2 primary languages. Surprisingly enough, Swedish, because actually when Sibelius was composing, there was no Finland. Only after World War I did a country called Finland actually exist. The net result of this is you have to learn Swedish.
That's
which
right.
is probably a language you've never sang in before.
That's right.
So how do you approach? I think singers all the time have to sing in languages they don't necessarily speak or understand. How do you approach a new language as a singer that to make sense of it?
Yeah, and it is true that we're always singing in languages that we may not necessarily be fluent in, but it's also true that usually we have spent at least a semester, probably more, at some point in our lives really studying it and sort of getting down to the nitty-gritty of it. And in this case, that's a luxury that I don't have, to be back in college and taking a class, right? So it's a whole new way of learning it, and it involves a lot of just study time and speaking it on my own to get the words in my mouth, but it's actually a lot more listening than I might otherwise do. A lot of folks would suggest to when you're learning music to not listen quite so much, because you might just by nature try to imitate what you're hearing in terms of interpretation or the way to sing a song, and that should sort of be your choice as an artist, right? But when learning a language, the only way, unless you're going to take private language lessons, is to listen to native speakers a ton and just try to learn how they would say it, because that's the right way to say it, right? Of course, you have to factor in things like dialect, the changes one might have to make in a certain range of one's voice in a language. But if you listen to a wide range of singers singing a wide range of things that are either Swedish, sing a bunch in Swedish, right? That's sort of my approach. There's always things like the IPA guides where you can write down how to say things, and that's great. But that doesn't teach you the nuances, right? The stresses, the text painting that as a non-native speaker is not going to jump off the page to me.
Yeah, and that doesn't really get you the spirit. I feel like, and it also doesn't get you the sort of, for lack of a better term, the flow of a language.
Exactly.
Right. You don't want to sound like you're just saying empty syllables, because if you don't want, you can type in IPA to a computer program and it will spit it back out at you, right. And it's sort of demonstrably not what you should be doing.
You don't want it to sound like Siri is singing the song, right?
Yeah.
You want it to have some kind of a personality. And for me, that's the reason to sing. There are beautiful melodies and beautiful harmonies in every type of music, but singing is unique because of the way that we can use text. And so, I care a lot about that, and I think that most singers do. And so if it's a language that I'm a little less familiar with, it's on me to learn how to convey what needs to be conveyed. And that's not to say that I'm going to listen to a recording and copy everything they do. On the contrary, but I'm going to try to understand the choices they're making and then make my own choices based on that.
That makes sense. So my third question, I think this whole Home series is all focused on nationalist music that from composers who were trying to evoke the spirit of their homeland in some way or another. And but it's always interesting because I don't think a single person who sang a song on the entire Home series was from the country or the region that the music was trying to evoke. So how do you approach this sort of nationalist music and conveying the idea of a homeland when you're not from this homeland? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's twofold. It's both. I definitely do some research because I've never been to any of the sort of Norwegian countries. I don't know much about them. I don't know people from there. I've never been there. So I think things like Google image searches to see the places that they're speaking about is important. I think that artwork is important. Reading is important. But I also think that, and this is true with any vocal music for me, it's incumbent upon the artist to find a way to relate to it, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to directly relate to the feeling of not having a homeland, and especially not a Scandinavian homeland, right? It's just, there's no hope of that. And that's similar to, if I were singing something like the Erlkönig, like I cannot relate to a demon capturing my son or being the son, it's just not relatable. But you have to find a kernel of truth in there that you can relate to, because again, otherwise it's not going to be an interesting rendition of that song. So I take it both in that I do think it's important to do a little research so that you have a strong foundation from which to build. But I also think my approach is not necessarily to put myself in the poet's shoes or Sibelius' shoes when he was setting these poems, but it's to find something that I can relate and find the core of the emotion and convey that.
Yeah, and I think, I think one of the sort of common themes in all of these sort of nationalist songs is the sort of longing and missing something. All the great nationalist composers who were conveying music through sort of national idioms really were saying the same basic things about human nature.
Absolutely.
Through their various countries' music, and that the greatest of the national music requires absolutely no understanding of their culture per se, because there's something universal that it doesn't matter where you're from. If the song is great, it doesn't matter that it's in Swedish or in Finnish, it will resonate. And maybe, a composer who writes much less ethnically specific music that's not as musically engaging will not get any more credit for not being specific to their homeland.
It's important for the poet and the composer to set something very near and dear to their heart, but 100 years later, we have to find what makes it relevant for us. And I think something that's really beautiful about this Home series is that, throughout life, the more people you meet from various backgrounds, the more you realize that every emotion is totally universal. At least that's my perspective. And so this really shows that from sort of concert to concert. Really disparate types of music, languages, styles, singers, everything about it. But it really all is kind of saying the same thing.
Exactly. And that's a perfect note to do my final plug for our final Home concert. Friday, March 6th at the Brooklyn Historical Society. Songs by Sibelius on the first half, and the second half is all works by Edvard Grieg from Norway. Who's in
Great
this concert.
songs.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Love those songs.
So we have soprano Christina Backrack and Sarah Braley. We have contralto Sarah Kuden, Brian, and then we have Dimitri Dover, Daniel Schlossberg, and myself on piano. Tickets are in that little box thing right there. So thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.